Hello everyone and welcome back to the New York Empoleon's first GBA video in, 5 years. We are here with, of course, the assistant coach of the New York Empoleon, the first ever assistant coach of the New York Empoleon, Addison, and we will be going over our draft for this season. Before we get started, though, I just want to acknowledge that while the GBA has sort of said front offices are discouraged, I am not the kind of player who enjoys playing Pokemon exclusively for the competitive aspect of it, and I don't like doing it on my own. So while Addison and I will be the primary builders every week, I will have some friends of mine that I will be doing mocks with and things like that. I want to give them a shout out, and I don't want them to feel like they have to be hidden or not known in the community. So it is a smaller front office than I would usually do. It's just a couple of friends that I trust, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that my prep is not going to exclusively be between Addison and I. And while we will have obviously final say on the teams, there is going to be some additional help there. And if the GBA has a problem with that, I think for me, Pokemon's more about community than it is about winning. So I'm going to keep having it be about my community. Beyond that, we're just going to go through what was called the best Gen 6 team in the draft stream when I watched that back, and I think this team's a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a really exciting team, and yes, obviously many of these mons are staples from the Oras era, but I think they have just as much viability now as they did before. So to get started, Addison, you actually probably have more to say about this than I do.
Yeah.
Addison was incredibly helpful in making sure this got done. She took over fully for the duration of the live draft, the auction portion. So what were your thoughts there? How did you feel about that?
Well, I enjoyed it because I got to just run the prices up on people. And since you weren't around, I was able to just be risky about it without you freaking out. Fun. It's really fun to like, we're a team, like, we're working on this together, obviously, but also simultaneously, I felt a little bit more like, I'm just gonna, up the price on this one, up the price on that one, even though that is not what you told me when we did that call, but that's what we did. But we went in to the auction draft. It was an auction draft. Basically saying, okay, well, there's a few key mons that we like, and there's things like Pult, and there's things like Valiant, and those are like the mons you spend a lot of money for. But if you don't get those mons, it was kind of just me a question of like seeing what falls, not necessarily what falls, but like what falls for cheap. And I think in terms of like auction value, I think we got, in my opinion, like some of the best top 4 picks that I saw in the entire league. The fact that we got Greninja uncontested.
I'd agree with that.
The fact that we got Garchomp, which is just like the ultimate Gloomon for any draft league team, like for very cheap. The fact that we were able to just get Mew right off the bat, so we had all these like, necessary things covered, like hazard control and pivoting and all of that. Zapdos as well is a really great Gloomon. Like, we just got like 4 really great Gloomons at the start of the draft that really meant that we could just like pick the mons that we liked for the rest of the draft. And I thought that was really cool. Like, we don't necessarily, I think, have like, a Pult or an Iron Valiant or like anything like that, but the people who do have those mons were the people who spent all the money on those mons and then had to wait for the rest of their picks to see what falls. And I think my strategy as the draft progressed was that I would spend a sort of a balanced number of points on the first 5 draft picks. And I think we did that pretty well. I mean, I like what we have. I get that it's called a Gen 6 team, but also at the same time, like, Chomp does something incredibly different this generation than it used to do. So does Mew, so does Zapdos, so does Greninja, so does... And now we have like a Saraledge and a Hisuian Decidueye. Like, as cool as like these mons are on paper, they look like they're from X and Y. A lot of them, they all have different functionalities this gen, which makes the team operate a lot differently than some of these GBA dinosaurs might expect.
And I think beyond just like what the mons are by name, I think both you and I have very similar desire when we play to have the ability to flex between different sets. And having a mon that does like one job incredibly well, let's say, but one job, you know, like a Palafin or an Iron Bundle that like it literally only does one thing and it's really good at it, but that's all it can do, is actually, I think, and like the antithesis of what you and I would look for.
Well, it's just boring. It's just, yeah. It doesn't really give me much interest.
Yeah.
And I don't think it gives you much interest.
No, and I think this team has
the meta now, but
I think this team has so much flexibility. And I think when you're coming into a draft league, the idea of, you know, trying to win 10 weeks against incredibly stiff competition with the same thing doing the same thing is just incredibly challenging. And it's easier when you walk into a battle and your opponent immediately says, I did not predict that mon, I do not know what's coming. Right? That actually makes your life so much easier. So even if it's a mon that they thought was discountable or a mon they weren't threatened by, if you can bring a set that threatens them, like, and they didn't prepare for it correctly, that's so much more valuable in draft league. So I agreed with all of your picks, and I think the value that you got on each of them was super nice. Like, just the fact they were all cheap was really helpful too.
Well, and I think what was particularly nice about the auction draft and then you having that amount of time to then fill out the rest of the draft was that because I got 4 mons at the start that, you know, really fill most roles that you need on any team of 6. So you have like the speed mon in Greninja, you have spikes, you have stealth rocks, you have a ground immunity, you have sort of the all-rounder in Mew, you have the electric immunity, like you have the psychic immunity, like you have all of these sort of, and I hate like checkbox drafts, I hate that, and I'm not trying to say that's what this is, as much as I'm just trying to say, to your point, we have 4 mons at the top of like our team here that can functionally bring a different set every single week if we want them to. And, you know, we can pretty easily slap those 4 mons on a team in any given matchup. These are not mons that ever do not have matchup. And we have such a versatile, like, you know, next 7 picks between Saraledge, Fortress, Sidui, and the rest, you know, that we can very easily sort of plug and play those last 2 slots quite often. And as far as I'm concerned, that's pretty cool. I mean, we have
yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan.
The mons that we're bringing most often are some of the most versatile mons that we have.
Yeah. And
then the mons that we're going to be bringing less frequently are freed up to do so many things because we've already filled so many roles with our high tiers. And that seems kind of a mutual goal because, you know, I know you absolutely love using your low tiers. So to be able to open up low tiers that are unique and strong and powerful, but don't necessarily need to like fill any gaps that the team lacks, that's pretty important, right? Because we already fill those gaps with our first few picks.
Yeah, and I think the idea of not feeling obligated to like bring a low tier every single week, because sometimes it's like I want to use this mon because I think it'd be really interesting. For instance, one of the mons that did this for me always was Blastoise. Every time I drafted, it's like I wanted to draft it because I thought it was really cool, and I thought it'd have really cool sets and versatility. And then you bring the same 2 sets every week. Either it's a sweeper, right? It does Tail Smash, or it's defensive and it rapid spins. Like it doesn't really do anything else. And even though it has a bunch of moves and it has some interesting tech that you could use in theory, because of it being your bulky water, it ends up always filling the same roles. And I think if you have mons that are on your high tiers that are going to fill those roles and they're going to do them well and be versatile at the same time, then you can use your low tiers for the fun stuff you actually want to use them for. And that's really what we went with for the low tiers, was like, what fun stuff seems interesting, I think was our draft strategy.
I'm so stoked for the low tiers. Like I think it's gonna be so much fun. Like I'm so excited to use some of the Hisuian mons like Decidueye and Overquill. And like get to like experimentally build with them because I think that their potential has not been fully unlocked by the community yet. I think Terra Saraledge definitely has legs. That was the mon that I think I took the most risk on in terms of what that last pick was going to be because I sort of, there wasn't much left in that tier. So to get that as the Terramon, I think offered up a lot of interest. I'm so excited for Lilligant because Terra Lilligant sounds like so much fun. I'm so excited for Zangoose because Zangoose is one of those mons that I think everyone like universally thought was a good low tier. Many years ago, and then has kind of just like disappeared. So definitely want to grant some new light into that mon as well. I just like every single mon on this team excites me. Like even the boring shit. Like Fortress and Florges have new tools this generation to explore. So it's very fun.
Yeah, and I think, so just to clarify, because obviously this is draft analysis on my channel, it's possible people didn't watch the draft or know too much about what's going on in the GBA, because I don't actually advertise it all that much. The way this league works is the first 5 picks were a auction style draft. The next 6 were a snake style, just classic draft. You just picked your mons. But after that, we picked up to 2 Terra captains, and those Terra captains could Terra into 2 types. You had to pick 1 stab type and 1 non-stab type. So we picked Cerulege, which can Terra into Ghost and Fairy, and Lilligant, which can Terra into Grass and Fire. Those are the only types that we can use, and we will, of course, during team builders, tell you exactly what types the opponents can do as well. You could have chosen an S tier. Our S tiers are Greninja and Garchomp, and just an S tier as your Terramon instead of having 2. We felt like that was, besides the fact that Greninja doesn't need it, it has Protean, like what's the point? And Garchomp is doing a million other things and does not need to Terra. Its typing is actually like one of its biggest assets. We also felt like having an extra Terramon, especially with the restrictions of the Terra where it's only 2 types, can just add extra versatility to your team and add extra team building stress to your opponent. So I think in the long term, people will find that 2 Terra options, even if they are 2 lower tier Terra options, are better than 1. And speaking of low tier Terra options, I think anything with Quiver Dance is stupid that it can Terra. And Lilligant as a D tier Terra option, which is the lowest tier that we had, and pulling it out and saying Grass and Fire is, you have to predict if it's going to Terra, right? Like either you go for hitting the Grass type and you run into a Fire type, or you try to predict the Fire type's going to pop out this turn, you hit a Grass type, it lives the hit, it gets off a Sleep Powder or Quiver Dance, it does its job. I mean, that's all it needs to do. Once it does that, it outspeeds basically everything, and then its coverage is pretty solid in Grass, Fire, Bug, and whatever else I might need. So it's just like a super fun mon to use. Anything with Quiver Dance is. And Cerulege, obviously similarly, good defensive typing, setup capabilities, and the possibility of Terra is obviously really powerful for it. And I just think, yeah, like looking at this team, it just seems like a blast. And I think that's what we're here for. But I think both Addison and I will agree that the GBA is a very big community. It is a very big chance to show yourself and show off your Pokemon skills. But more than that, it's a chance to have some fun. And that's what we're here for. We're going to try to win. I'm certainly not going to sit here and say I'm not a competitive person and I want to win these battles. Addison, I'm sure, would feel similarly. But if we lose a battle, but we had a chance to run some crazy sets, that's probably what we're going to go with. And on that same note, I don't know if this is true of every team, but the assistant coach gets to battle sometimes, and I certainly will allow and hopefully encourage Addison to take on the mantle in certain weeks. It hasn't been determined which matchups or anything like that at this time, but up to 3 battles, there is no penalty for the assistant coach doing, and if she's available and wants to do it, this team was designed for both Addison and I to use at different times based on what we felt was the best coach to handle the team for that matchup. And that's why it's really nice to have so many versatile mons, because it fits both of our play styles very well. Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else I have to say about the draft analysis. Battles start up next week. So Team Builder and Battle will come out next weekend, so keep an eye on that. And other than that, welcome to the GBA, everybody. We're back, Season 10. It's going to be a wild one, and I think as one of the 2 returning coaches for the GBA from Season 9, looking to make a statement here and say that I deserve just as much to be here. Addison, everyone knows, deserves to be here. One of the best Gen 8 coaches of all time, and we'll see in Gen 9 how you feel.
It's terrible. I'm so bad. What is Trailblaze?
But yeah, so I think it's, going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see what happens. But ultimately, we are here to provide content and have a good time. And hopefully you're here for the journey with us. And we will see you all next week. Take care, everybody. One thing we forgot to talk about during the actual draft analysis itself, but I think deserves mention before we get started with the season, is that the GBA is not just using a pure win-loss record to determine who's going to make playoffs. All the teams are in one division together, or whatever you want to call it, so it's all just compared to each other, and you're going to play basically, I think, every team one time. That's not the issue. What we're doing here is actually using a points system, and it's very diverse.
in terms of how you can score points and what you're actually looking to do in an individual match. So I want to go over it a little bit because I think it's actually quite important, and it will affect not draft strategy so much, but gameplay and team building strategy. And I think it's really actually something worth discussing, and I don't know how many coaches are going to in their draft analysis, so at least this one will have it. On the left, what you're going to see here is what actually happens as a result of the game. You are going to score some points based on your game result. The first thing is if your game finishes. That's the big thing. I'm going to try to finish all my games. I don't really like the idea of winning by timer. Obviously, they have to have a contingency for it, but we're going to talk first about what happens if your game finishes. Step 1, if you win, but the game is close. That's what I've always defined it as. If it's a 0-0, 1-0, 2-0, or 3-0 game, but you won it, you get 2 points. So a small win is worth 2 points. A big win, so a 4-0, 5-0, or 6-0 is worth 3 points. Those are not cumulative. It's not like if you get a 5-0 win, you get 5 points for it. It's just either you get 2 points or you get 3 points, depending on how big the differential was at the end of the game. The loser, doesn't matter whether they lost close or whether they lost big, gets 0. That's notable. One thing I've done with point systems in the past is actually had the loser, if it's a close game, get a point. So basically I would say like there are 3 points on offer. If you win big, you get all 3. If you win tight, that you get 2 and your opponent gets 1. It just gives some like value to continuing to fight when the game is going to be close, or there's a chance it's going to be close, and you actually get something out of it. I get here you still get 1 point away from your opponent, but that's not as impressive as a 2-point swing where you get a point out of it. Anyway, if the game doesn't finish and the timer is the reason that the game ends, then the winner, based on whatever the game decides, obviously put number of Pokemon remaining or HP or whatever it's going to be, gets 2 points. It doesn't matter what the number of Pokemon remaining is. You could be up 6-1, you get 2 points. If you lose with the timer expiring, you get 1 point. Now note, this league is using chess timer, which means it is fully within your capability to just wait out your own timer and score a point and prevent your opponent from scoring a point. I don't like that. I think that's kind of it's an incentive in the wrong direction. I think is how I'll phrase that. And I think the idea that you get points for losing with a timer, but you don't get points for losing a tight contested match. 0-0, you get 0. But 1-1, you get 1. Right? I don't know if I like that. I don't think that's the right way to incentivize. I think that incentivizes people, especially later in the season, to build stall and then wait their clock out, because the 1 point change when the timer expires is not sufficient. Now, they may have rules, and I don't actually know. I haven't really looked into it yet because I don't intend to stall the timer. Even if it would help me get into playoffs, I don't intend to do it. They may have rules in place for like obvious and intentional timer stall. I'm not sure. I'm going to be honest. The other possible result in Pokemon is a tie. I don't really think this is going to come up, but technically both players score 1 point if there's a tie. I have never seen a tie in Pokemon. It would have to be a game that doesn't finish. I don't even know how it would work, because there are differentiators for explosion-based kills, for Destiny Bond-based kills, for 0-0 is still like a result that can happen with a winner and a loser. So it would have to be a game that goes to timer with the exact same amount of Pokemon remaining, exact same quantitative HP, which is... It's not going to happen. I understand they had to make a contingency for it, so ignore that point. It's really not obtainable, but it's on the list just because technically that's how it works. On the right-hand side of this chart are all of the ways you can score bonus points each week. Every one of these listed is 1 bonus point. I guess not all of them are available every single week, but I'll go over them because they are actually really important. These are where the season will be won or lost. You can go 10 wins, 0 losses, and finish as like the 4 seed, because some people are going to maximize their ability to score an additional 2 to 3 points every single week. And if you think about that, that's basically an additional win you're getting. So if I win 4-0 and my Pokemon gets 4 kills, I just get 4 points. And if it's a home game, I get 5. So here's what we're going to talk about. Just going to go over those bonus points. Unstoppable is what it's called. It's a Pokemon gets 4+ kills in a battle. It's got to be a single Pokemon, and you can actually get this as the loser. If you get a Mon that has 4+ kills, but you lost like 1-0, but your one single mon got all the kills, you get a point. And that's important because it means sweepers are like the thing to look out for. And this is a gen where sweepers are very, very easy to create. You can have breakers that turn into sweepers. You can have priority mons that turn into sweepers. You can just have mons that are good at sweeping in general. And I think that's really important to think about every single week. Maybe not like necessarily prevent your opponent from doing, but focusing on in your team prep as well as just being something that you can get every single week. Because it is a free bonus point every week is like 10 points over the course of the season. That's like 5 wins, right? So that's crazy. Some people are better at that than others. I will admit I'm actually not particularly good at getting one mon a bunch of KOs. So I definitely want to make sure that I'm paying more attention to that than usual because it's something that I think I need to focus on personally. Hometown Hero. These are games where you have been designated as a home game. So every single game has a designated home team and a designated away team. There is no points for stealing someone else's home game. When you're away, it's just a regular game. But 5 times throughout the season, you have the home field advantage, and you can actually just score a bonus point by winning. It doesn't matter what your differential is. If you win and you were designated the home team before the season started, you get an extra point. Flat out. That's it. And those 5 points are important because, again, 5 points is like 2 or 2.5 wins, which is crazy. So those are games you really want to focus on and pay attention to. But I'll post on the screen here what my home game weeks are so you can see them. Those are the games we're going to be focusing on prep a lot more because an extra bonus point goes a long way. It may sound not like a whole lot, but it's literally half a win by itself, or it's the difference between a 1-0 win and a 4-0 win. So you can just like play for a 1-0 and still get the points for a 4-0. It's huge. Next up is Not Today. That's what they're calling it, and it's a Pokemon lives a hit, an attacking hit specifically, from the opponent with 5 or less HP without a Focus Sash, Focus Band, Sturdy, Endure, Substitute usage. Just like it lives the hit. This is predictable. This is something you can prepare to do in team building. And I did clarify with the commissioner, it does not need to live the hit from full. It can be damaged first and then live a hit. So you can take chip damage over and over and over. You can set this up with your, like them setting up rocks can put you in range to live a hit on 5 or less HP. Notably, this is maximum 1 bonus point per game. So you can't just like have all your Pokemon survive on 5 or less HP, but it does give you incentive to build slightly more careful EV spreads, we'll call it. And I think the idea that one time during the game you can have a Pokemon just live on 5 or less, which is very doable and happens pretty much once a game, kind of incidentally. I'm probably going to give my opponents a lot of bonus points just because I miss rolls all the time, and I'm probably going to get a few just for the same reason, like people miss rolls. So yeah, it doesn't have to live from full. It can go from anywhere. It can go from like 8, and it can be like a Steelix, and it can take a Rapid Spin and go down to 5, and you're gonna get this point. So it's not like it doesn't need to be at full HP at all. It can be very chipped. It can't be getting onto 5 or less HP from Poison or Stealth Rock or anything. Like you can't switch it in and go down below 5 and count it as a point. It has to take a hit and then survive on 5 or less. So that is notable. You can't just like, ooh, I have like one more switch into rocks. I'll switch out, switch back in, and I'll get a point. You don't get that point for that, but you do get a point throughout the whole game if you're slowly wearing yourself down via rocks and put yourself in just out of range of another Pokemon's hit. So that is definitely a point you can get 10 times throughout the season. And admittedly, it's a very easy point to accumulate 10 times throughout the season. And the teams that do it well are going to win this league. Or at least going to make playoffs. The last two, Goat and Millennium Shield, are both 1 bonus point at the end of the season, and I don't care. Personally, I'm probably not going to get them. The Goat is just you have the most kill to death differential or kill to death ratio at the end of the season. So that's the highest plus minus. It's the offensive MVP of the season. You get 1 point for it. It's really not significant. I don't think that 1 point is going to make a difference at the end of the season. Maybe it will. Maybe I'll eat my words here, but I don't think that's going to be super significant. The Millennium Shield is the same thing, but for fewest deaths per game played or game appeared is how they're framing it. So you actually have to do list. You actually have to do list. Wow. In the stat tracking, you actually have to say if your Pokemon actually hit the field during a battle. So you don't get a game appeared if your Pokemon just was on your 6 but never actually hit the battlefield. So if you sweep your opponent on turn 4 and only 3 of your mons hit the battlefield, the ones that didn't don't actually get a bonus point or like a point towards their own games attended. And again, that's just 1 point at the end of the season. If there's a tie for either of the GOAT or Millennium Shield stats, then everyone just gets a point. All the tied mons get a point. And that's it. That's how you're going to score points this season. So going over this very quickly, winning, obviously still important. It's worth the most points. That's standard. But winning with a sweeper or winning with good EV spreads is actually going to get you a ton of points. And just think about this. If I get a 5-0 victory, right, in which my Pokemon set up and swept, I killed 5 of their Pokemon with it, and they were trying to chip it down throughout the course of the game, and they hit it down to 5 or less HP, I earned 5 points. 5 points, 3 points for the 5-0 win, 1 point for the unstoppable, 1 point for the not today, and if it happened to be a home game, I get 6 points. 6 points! That's crazy. That's absurd. Because 6 points is literally 3 1-0 wins in a single week. So you can make a huge jump in this season. And later in the season, I have a feeling people are going to realize they need to make those big jumps, and they're going to try to play for them. And it's going to make battles way more interesting in terms of how you see how your opponent's going to prep. If your opponent's like 4 points out of playoffs and they know a win isn't enough and they're going to need to do something like crazy to get in there, they're going to try. I mean, these are all very good competitors. They're all very strong. They're going to try to do something crazy. They're going to try to get an unstoppable mon. They're going to try to get, you know, a not today boost and like live on 5 or less HP. They're going to try to make playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see. I just wanted to talk about the point system because, again, wins and losses is not the whole story here. And there are so many points on offer every single week that you might as well never count anybody out in this league, because in a single week, you can get what amounts to 3 1-0 wins. Just all of a sudden is a huge burst of points. So I want to talk about that at the end of this video. I just wanted everyone to know about it. I hope other people are talking about it too and looking at this just as critically as I am, because I think it's a very diverse and robust point system. I think it's interesting. I think more leagues should think about things like this. I think the idea that you can like make a late season push despite having a record that doesn't necessarily showcase it is kind of fascinating. I think it's going to give teams more incentive to keep playing competitive, interesting prep games late in the season when they might be a couple games out of the playoff spot, just because there's a possibility that you get it. With that said, though, that's all I wanted to add to this video. I know it was like another entire length video, but yeah, I will see you all back here for the team builder for week 1. We've got something new planned for the team builders. Hopefully it goes well, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. That said, thank you all so much for watching. Take care, everybody.